Jordan. Oh, a spectacular move by Michael Jordan.
Pause. Let me address this up front. You probably already have an opinion on if Jordan could average 40 in today's NBA. To that I say, please comment it down below and allow me to present you with what the numbers have to say about this. I'm not a long-winded YouTuber who makes 10-minute videos, so I'm gonna play this intro and get into it. This is Topic Tackle. Let's go. What's good, people? JC3 here, and before I get going, I have a 5-second non-skippable ad. Topic Tackle merch is available below this video. If you support what I do by purchasing some merch, you're getting a shout out. Thank you. MJ is a career 30.1 points per game scorer, and that includes his 2 seasons in Washington, where he averaged 21.2 points per game. Looking solely at his 13 seasons in Chicago, the man averaged 31.5 points per game, and all of this was done in an era with far fewer possessions and 3-point attempts per game. Now, I'm only able to evaluate 2 of Jordan's seasons, 1996-97 and 1997-98, 2 seasons in which MJ did not reach his career average of 30.1. I'll be focusing in on the 96-97 season, and the reason I'm doing so is because this is when the NBA began logging more advanced analytics such as pace for individual teams and shot location for individual players. We'll come back to shot location, but first, let's look at pace. The 96-97 Bulls were 17th in the league in possessions per game with 91.5. Adjusting the Bulls' pace of play to 17th in 2018-2019 gives them 100.2 possessions per game, and with this we can calculate how many more points Jordan could have scored with the added possessions by plugging his points per game average and both paces into this formula. And when we do that, we end up with an adjusted points per game average of 32.4, which is still well off from 40. So this is the point when knowing shot location data is important, because I believe that Jordan would have evolved his game in today's NBA from the way he played in 1996-97. Now, while he wouldn't have become Steph Curry, alright, he would have attempted more threes and improved his 3-point jump shot to compete and win, and here's why I'm convinced of this. The scouting report on MJ coming out of college was that he was a great athlete with a questionable jumper. He worked tirelessly on his jumper to net the most mid-range field goals while shooting 49.5% on such shots in 96-97. That's a shout out to ESPN's Kirk Goldsberry for this terrific data. He developed this shot to further add to his arsenal, prolong his career, and help his team win. So if he was able to master the mid-range game, honestly, what would stop him from becoming an efficient 3-point shooter today? Now, this is the same man who literally cold-cocked 6 threes in the first half of Game 1 of the 1992 Finals to send a message. Plus, I'd argue that the level of difficulty on many of Jordan's mid-range shots were equally as hard, if not harder, than Harden's step-back threes or Curry's pull-up threes that we see today. These shots from MJ saw him fading away, consistently shooting over the outstretched arm of his defender. If he could make these shots, no one is telling me that he couldn't work to consistently connect on pull-up threes. With all this said, Jordan shot a total of 1,892 times and scored 2,431 points in the 96-97 season. He made 547 mid-range shots on 1,105 attempts. That's a 49.5% clip. He made 111 3-point shots on 297 attempts. That's 37.4%, which is actually a better 3-point percentage than Kawhi Leonard, Damian Lillard, James Harden, Chris Paul, and Kevin Durant in 2018-2019. Granted, now these players all attempted and made more threes per game than MJ, but some not by a huge margin though. So here's where we have to get a bit creative. Let's suppose MJ shoots 500 more 3-point jump shots, boosting his average 3-point attempts to 9.7 per game, and converts on the same 37.4% clip. This would also mean that he would have to attempt 500 less mid-range jump shots. Here's what the math looks like after the adjustment. Jordan now has scored an additional 561 points on threes, while losing 495 points on mid-range twos, leaving him with 2,497 total points and 30.5 points per game instead of 29.6. There's one more key aspect we must consider. In 96-97, Jordan shot an average of 7 free throws per game and converted 83.3% of the time. I find it surprising that MJ shot only 7 free throws a game, considering 84.3% of his shots came from 2-point range. Now, obviously, the league was more physical, fouls weren't called as often as they are today. Consider James Harden, who in 2018-19, only 46.1% of his field goal attempts came from 2-point range, and yet he still averaged 11 free throws per game. Granted, many of his 2-point field goal attempts came from inside 10 feet compared to MJ. The point I'm getting at is this: MJ would draw more fouls today on his 2-point attempts. Think about every time he backs down a defender for a fadeaway or pump fakes his defender in the air. These are potential fouls and free throws that refs would surely award a player of MJ's status. James Harden finds himself with roughly 9.7 points from the line each game on 11 attempts. If we increase MJ's free throw attempts to 11 per game on the same 83.3% clip, he would net roughly 9.2 points. That's an additional 3.3 points from the line per game. MJ's average would be at 33.8 points per game with the additional free throws, and when this average is adjusted to today's pace, Jordan finds himself as the scoring champion in 2018-19 with 37 points per game. So it's not quite 40, but remember, Jordan's average of 29.6 points per game in 96-97 was the 5th lowest in his 13 seasons with the Bulls. If seasons prior to 96-97 had pace data for individual teams and shot location data for individual players, it would be possible to run this analysis and find MJ averaging above 40 points multiple seasons. Just remember that MJ scored most of his points throughout his career in the teeth of the defense. Imagine what he could do with the spread out floor in today's league. He'd still dominate, and he'd be considered one of the greatest ever. Leave your feedback in the comments down below. Would MJ be the GOAT if he played today? More Topic Talk will come soon. Stay solid, people.